Do you even realize? This boy doesn't even feel like your flesh and blood." The words tore through the hushed courtroom like a gunshot. Gasps rippled across the rows of wooden benches. Every head turned toward the woman at the witness stand, Rebecca Sullivan, her voice trembling but defiant, her manicured hand clutched tightly around the railing as if it might steady her. Her husband, Michael Sullivan, sat frozen at the opposing table. For a split second, the world around him dissolved. The murmurs of the crowd, the creak of the ceiling fan, the gavel resting in the judge's hand. All he could hear were those words, echoing in his skull. Not your flesh and blood, 8 years. 8 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, school recitals, and baseball games. 8 years of sacrifices, of working late nights, of pouring his paycheck into a future for his family. And in one brutal sentence, Rebecca had shattered it all. Michael's jaw tightened, his shoulders stiffened, but he didn't shout. He didn't slam his fists on the table. Instead, he fixed his wife with a look so cold, so steady, that for the first time in their marriage, Rebecca felt the weight of a man who would not break. After 8 years in a sexless marriage, she had secretly gone to another man just to have a child, a secret she thought would stay buried forever, until it exploded in the middle of a custody battle. The courtroom was dead silent now, except for the sound of Rebecca's shallow breathing and the scratch of the court reporter's pen. Michael sat back, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear, but he didn't respond. His eyes never left hers. Think about it. Raising a child, believing every laugh, every hug, every "Dad, I love you" was truly yours, only to be told in front of strangers, lawyers, and a judge that it was all a lie. Rebecca thought she had cornered him, that her words would destroy him, force him to give up his fight for custody. But she underestimated Michael, because inside that quiet stare wasn't defeat, it was resolve. So let me ask you this. If one day you found out the child you've raised, loved, and sacrificed for wasn't biologically yours, what would you do? Would you walk away? Or would you stand your ground and fight? Drop your answer in the comments. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was a war where love, betrayal, and the law would collide in the most devastating way. And this was only the beginning. My name is Victoria Steele. For over 20 years, I've fought for justice in the courtroom, especially in cases of betrayal, custody, and broken trust. What you're hearing today is not just a story. It's a reality I've seen far too often. If you don't want to miss more true-to-life stories of love, lies, and justice, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon. Because trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Michael Sullivan was the kind of man people respected. A senior architect at one of Chicago's leading firms, he was known for his precision, his work ethic, and his quiet sense of responsibility. He provided a beautiful home in the suburbs, steady income, and the kind of stability most families only dreamed about. But behind the polished exterior, Michael carried a private struggle. Years of relentless stress, coupled with a medical condition he rarely spoke about, had left him with one unspoken wound: intimacy. The marriage bed was cold, not because he didn't love his wife, but because his body and his mind could not bridge the gap. Rebecca Sullivan was beautiful, ambitious, and always envied by her friends. She wore the life of a perfect suburban wife, like a designer dress, flawless on the outside, but hiding the seams within. More than anything, she wanted a child. A baby she could hold, a child to complete the picture-perfect family she posted about on social media. But instead of sitting across from Michael, speaking the hard truth, sharing her fears, she made a different choice. She chose secrecy. Their home looked perfect from the outside, a 2-story colonial with white shutters, manicured lawn, and holiday decorations that neighbors admired every year. To friends and colleagues, the Sullivans seemed like the golden couple. Dinner parties, vacations, smiling photos on Christmas cards. But inside, the house was cold. Conversations were short. Affection was rare. And every night, Rebecca went to bed with a hollow ache, convincing herself she deserved more. 1 year into the silence, she took matters into her own hands. She found someone else. Not for love, not for romance, for one purpose only: a child. Months later, when the baby was born, Michael's entire world lit up. He held the infant in his arms, tears streaming down his face, believing he had finally been given the family he always dreamed of. For Rebecca, the child was the answer to her longing. For Michael, the child became his heartbeat, his reason to push through 12-hour shifts, his joy in a life otherwise marked by sacrifice. The boy grew, laughing in the backyard, blowing out candles, calling Michael Dad. Every sound, every smile, every hug was the glue that kept the fragile marriage from collapsing. To the outside world, the Sullivans had it all: career, family, a beautiful son. But beneath the surface, the truth lay buried, silent, dangerous, waiting for the day it would detonate. It started with a whisper. At a company holiday party, one of Michael's colleagues, after too many drinks, leaned in a little too close. "Funny, isn't it?" he chuckled. "How little your boy looks like you." Michael forced a smile, brushed it off, and raised his glass. But the words clung to him like a stain. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling fan. The laughter of his colleagues echoed in his head. Every feature of his son's face flashed before his eyes: his hair, his nose, the curve of his jaw. Michael whispered to himself, "He's mine. He has to be mine." But doubt had already sunk its claws deep. Weeks later, during a routine pediatric visit, the doctor's casual comment sliced him open. "Your son has a rare blood type." Quite unusual, Michael's hands went cold. He knew his blood type. He knew Rebecca's, and the math didn't work. Driving home that afternoon, the streets of Chicago blurred. Stoplights, traffic, horns. It was all noise, meaningless against the roar in his mind. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Back home, after Rebecca went upstairs, he opened his laptop. He typed the question he never wanted to ask: blood type inheritance chart. The answer appeared in seconds: cold, clinical, undeniable. Michael stared at the screen, the truth pounding against his ribs like a hammer. His son, the boy who called him Dad, could not be his by blood. He sat there for hours, frozen. The glow of the monitor lit his hollow eyes. Tears blurred the words, but they didn't change. Nothing would change. He could have stormed into their bedroom that night, slammed the laptop on the bed, and demanded answers. He could have shouted, accused, unleashed the fury building in his chest. But when he opened the door, he didn't see Rebecca. He saw his son. The boy was curled under the blankets, his small chest rising and falling with each breath. Michael knelt beside him, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. The child stirred, mumbled sleepily, and whispered, "Good night, Dad." The word cut deeper than any knife. Michael kissed his son's cheek, stood up slowly, and closed the door. That night, he made his decision. He would not confront Rebecca. Not yet. Instead, he would carry the weight of this secret in silence. He would gather proof, piece by piece. School reports, medical records, financial documents. Every paper, every detail would become a weapon in the war he knew was coming. And in the meantime, he would protect the boy. Because no matter what blood said, love was not so easily erased. Still, the silence was suffocating. At dinner, Rebecca laughed carelessly, pouring wine into her glass, while Michael studied her face in silence. Did she know he suspected? Did she feel his eyes on her? He said nothing, not even when she asked why he was so quiet. Instead, he smiled faintly and changed the subject, but inside, his heart screamed. Each morning, he rose early, put on his suit, kissed his son goodbye, and drove to work like nothing was wrong. Each evening, he came home, read bedtime stories, and tucked the boy in like always. Rebecca thought she had buried her secret forever. But Michael knew better, because some truths didn't need to be chased. Time itself had a way of bringing them to light. And when that day came, Michael would be ready. Ready to show Rebecca that silence, wielded with patience, could be the sharpest revenge of all. Michael carried his silence like armor. To Rebecca, it looked like abandonment. She told her friends, "He doesn't talk to me anymore. He barely looks at me. It's like I'm married to a ghost." In her mind, she wasn't the one who had broken the marriage. Michael was. His coldness felt like rejection, and her pride could not endure it. So she made her move. She filed for divorce, and in those papers she demanded full custody of their son, insisting Michael was too distant, too obsessed with work to be a real father. The irony almost made him laugh. The woman who had lied for 8 years now stood in court, painting him as inadequate. But Michael didn't argue. Not yet. Instead, he arrived at the courthouse with a calm, so unnerving that Rebecca shifted nervously in her seat. At the first mediation, her lawyer spoke with conviction. "Yes, Mr. Thompson earns the income, but money isn't fatherhood. Rebecca has been the true caregiver in this home." Michael folded his hands. His voice was quiet but steady. "For 8 years, every dollar that raised this boy came from me. The mortgage, the tuition, the hospital bills, every cent." He slid a folder across the table. Inside, bank statements, receipts, insurance records. Rebecca's confident smile cracked. That was the first fracture. At the second session, her lawyer doubled down. "My client believes stability is best for the child. Michael travels, he works long hours. He doesn't really know his son." Michael didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled out photographs, dozens of them, baseball games, school recitals, doctor's visits, parent-teacher meetings. In every photo, Michael was there, sometimes exhausted, still in his work suit, but always present. The mediator glanced at Rebecca, eyebrows raised, her cheeks flushed. That was the second fracture. But Michael was patient. He knew the greatest blow could not come too soon. So he waited, and he planned. At the third session, Rebecca grew bolder, her frustration bleeding into arrogance. "He's not even close to the child," she snapped. "And besides, he doesn't share blood. That bond is what really matters." Her lawyer winced, sensing the danger. Michael stayed silent for a long moment. Then he placed a sealed envelope on the table. "I wasn't planning to share this today," he said softly. "But since blood was mentioned..." The room fell silent. The mediator opened the envelope. Inside was the DNA report. Cold, precise, undeniable. Gasps filled the air. Rebecca's face drained of color. Michael leaned back, his words sharper than any outburst. "For 8 years, I loved this boy as my own." "I still do. But don't you dare tell me I'm not his father. I've been more of a parent than anyone in this room." Rebecca's hands trembled. Her lawyer whispered frantically, but she barely heard him. Outside the courtroom, whispers began spreading. Friends, family, even neighbors who once admired their perfect Christmas cards now asked questions. Rebecca's perfect image fractured piece by piece. Michael didn't have to shout. He didn't have to humiliate her directly. He only had to reveal. Each folder of documents, each photograph, each carefully timed truth. And with every revelation, Rebecca's confidence crumbled further. The woman who once thought she controlled the marriage now sat trembling, mascara streaking her cheeks, realizing the man she had underestimated had built a fortress of truth around himself. Michael's patience had become precision, his silence a blade, and Rebecca, caught in her own web of lies, was beginning to suffocate. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as the custody hearing began. Rebecca sat at the plaintiff's table, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup polished to project confidence, but her trembling hands in her lap betrayed the storm inside. Michael sat across from her, calm, unreadable. Beside him, I, Victoria Steele, his attorney, sat ready. Years of patience had led him to this moment. The judge called for opening statements. Rebecca's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, this case is simple. My client has been the primary caregiver for the child, Mr. Thompson may provide financial support, but fatherhood is more than money. We ask the court to grant Rebecca full custody." Rebecca lifted her chin, nodding faintly as though victory were already hers. But Michael didn't flinch. He had lived with whispers, with suspicions that gnawed at him late at night. He had replayed the little things, missed doctor's appointments, Rebecca's evasive answers, the way the boy's features never quite resembled his own. For years he buried those doubts, convincing himself love was stronger than blood. But love can't silence truth forever. Then I rose to my feet. "Your Honor, yes, fatherhood is more than money. It is presence. It is sacrifice. And above all, it is truth. And today the truth will be laid before this court." I walked to the clerk's desk and placed a sealed envelope down. "The defense submits Exhibit A." The clerk handed it to the judge. He opened it slowly. Inside was a DNA report. His brows furrowed as he scanned the lines. Rebecca's attorney leaned forward, uneasy. Rebecca shifted in her seat, her smile fading. The judge spoke. "This report confirms, with 99.9% accuracy, that Michael Thompson is not the biological father of the minor child." The words struck the room like a gavel. Silence followed, heavy, suffocating. Michael's chest tightened, a familiar ache clawing at him. He had suspected. He had even prepared. Yet hearing it confirmed before the world was like being cut open all over again. 8 years of laughter, scraped knees, whispered, "I love you, Dad," now poisoned with betrayal. Rebecca's face drained of color. The confidence she wore like armor shattered, leaving only raw panic. No, that's impossible," she stammered, her voice cracking. Her attorney whispered frantically, but the papers in the judge's hands were undeniable. Gasps spread through the gallery. Family members whispered, rumors igniting like wildfire. Michael stood. His voice was low, steady, but every word cut sharper than a scream. "You wanted custody, Rebecca?" He stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. "Then explain to this court why the child you swore was mine carries another man's blood." Rebecca collapsed into her chair. Tears streaked her face, her body trembling. She tried to speak, but no words came out. The judge's gavel struck, demanding order. But order had already been decided. Rebecca's world crumbled before everyone's eyes. The secret she thought would stay buried forever was now carved into the court record for all to see. And Michael, silent, steady, unshaken, stood like the man who had turned her lies into her own undoing. The courtroom was still heavy with silence long after the judge's gavel fell. Rebecca sat slumped in her chair, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. The woman who once commanded every room, now reduced to a trembling shadow. Her parents, who'd been sitting behind her, rose quietly and left without a word. Friends who once admired her confidence turned their eyes away, unwilling to meet her gaze. The foundation of respect she had built her image upon had collapsed in one afternoon. Whispers spread through the courthouse corridors. Rebecca Sullivan, the wife who lied, the mother who deceived, the woman who nearly tore apart a man's life with her secrets. Her reputation was no longer simply damaged, it was destroyed. At the center of it all sat a boy, confused and small, swinging his legs nervously as the adults around him argued over his fate. He was innocent, unaware of the storm his mother's betrayal had unleashed, and yet he carried the heaviest burden of all, the truth of his parentage written forever in cold clinical DNA. Michael's face was pale, his eyes clouded not with victory, but with grief. He loved that boy. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every proud moment on the baseball field had been real to him. And that love hadn't evaporated in the face of science. But love couldn't erase betrayal, and love couldn't rewrite blood. Michael spoke softly, his voice carrying across the courtroom with calm authority. "I don't want to hurt him. He's still a child, but this court deserves the truth, and so does he. I will always care for him, but I will not live under a lie any longer." The judge nodded solemnly, noting Michael's words into the record. Rebecca buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking, the weight of her choices finally crushing her. This wasn't just about custody anymore. It was about trust, shattered, irrevocable, gone. And in that moment, everyone understood. The consequences of betrayal are never borne by the guilty alone. They fall hardest on the innocent who never asked to be part of the lie. The judge adjusted his glasses, his tone solemn. "This court will take time to review custody, weighing the best interests of the child above all else. Biology is important, yes, but so is love, and this child deserves both truth and stability." The gavel fell once more, not as a weapon, but as a promise that justice would follow its course. Rebecca sat broken, her world in ruins. Michael stood tall, not as a man who sought vengeance through rage, but as one who let truth and the law deliver the final blow. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't raised his hand. He had only raised the truth. And in the end, that was enough. Because betrayal is a kind of violence, too, one that cuts deeper than fists ever could. And Michael had answered it not with hatred, but with resolve. Let this be remembered. A sexless marriage is not the greatest danger. A dishonest one is. Because secrets always find their way to the light. So let me leave you with this. If you were the judge, who would you trust with custody? The mother who gave birth, or the father who sacrificed and nurtured for 8 years? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story hit you, don't just move on. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss the next case where love, betrayal, and justice collide. Because here, every lie gets exposed, and the fight for truth is only just beginning.